Hello, everyone, and first, an apology for being this long before another news roundup. The main reason behind it is I didn't feel like I could make a video that was a news roundup that wasn't just here are some new game announcements. However, we do have some cool news stories to share with you now, so let's get to it for the week of November 13th, 2023. Our first story technically is happening because of the SAG-AFTRA union agreement with the Hollywood studios. The reason being was because during this entire strike, since all the actors were on strike, none of the studios could promote any of their new projects they had in the pipeline. But now that the agreement has been made, in the last week or so, we've seen a ton of new announcements for movies and TV shows. And the reason we're talking about that on this board game news show is that they announced for Netflix a new show based off Exploding Kittens. The premise of the show is that God and Satan are doing their final battle, but apparently went to Earth and have accidentally got themselves trapped in the bodies of cats. And I assume there'll be plenty of explosions, this is Exploding Kittens, throughout the entire first season. Now, we only know, to my knowledge, the voice actor for God, or the God Cat, and that's Tom Ellis, who, to my knowledge, is most known for, or at least I'm most known for, as playing Lucifer in the show Lucifer. So I guess he has a bit of an advantage here as he's played both Lucifer and God, so maybe he'll be able to defeat Lucifer as he already knows the playbook. That being said, it looks like your regular raunchy adult comedy humor, of course with the oatmeal art style, and because, Exploding Kittens, to my knowledge, doesn't actually have a deep lore or story to it, I assume there's a lot of weird stuff that can go along with that, and we'll see how this turns out. Will the show actually be good? Well, I don't know everyone who's attached to it, because that could always change whether it's good or not, who's writing it, directing, as well as, of course, I will admit Exploding Kittens was not one of the first shows on my list of games I expect or would like to see adapted into movies or TV shows. However, I still hope it does well, because if this does well, hopefully that means that Netflix, or at least other streaming studios, will go to the world of Tabletop to try and get some more content. And maybe we can see some adaptations for things maybe that aren't as well known. Nothing against Dungeons and Dragons, but this is still popular, but Sentinels of the Multiverse, I think, is ripe for picking for some kind of animation or live adaptation. So we'll have to see how this goes and whether it's going to be a mediocre show or another great show on Netflix that gets canceled after one season. Now, one of the reasons I mentioned I didn't make any news roundups because I couldn't collect enough stories about that weren't announcements, but one thing that kept coming up, and it just is one of those stories that almost maybe deserve its own video and discussion, was almost, I feel, every week was a new announcement of another property joining Magic the Gathering's Beyond Universe line. The Beyond Universe is basically for already established properties. For example, the Warhammer, Doctor Who just came out, the Jurassic Park and the new Ixalan set came out, but we also heard that the new Fallout decks are coming. They announced that they have a partnership with Marvel, and we also learned just this week that there's now some Tomb Raider cards that'll be coming soon. And this has caused a lot of debate, some people being angry that we're seeing the Fortnite-ification of Magic the Gathering, while others point out that this is a great way for people to join up who are new to Magic. And I definitely see both sides. It can be a little bit annoying when, especially if you're not interested in the property, then it can feel really out of place in your game. Like if you're not interested in a set of Magic, at least it feels like it's usually belongs in that world. Versus if you see one of the doctors carrying around the sword of Feast and Famine taking on a god of chaos from Warhammer. But I do, on the other hand, understand the idea of trying to get new blood. Because, at least in my experience talking to game store owners, as well as just other people, once again, this is probably a bit more of anecdotal evidence, but still is what is seen is that Magic is joined by people who sort of get invited into the group. Like you have to know someone already in the know, versus when you look at a lot of the other big card games out right now. I mean, there's already established Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon, but One Piece and Disney Lorcana are currently on their heels, with many arguing we're going to start entering a big 5 timeline for card games rather than the big 3. And all of those are based on already existing TV shows and properties, meaning that you may watch the show or movie and be like, oh, I'm going to get into the card game because I like those properties. Magic doesn't really have anything outside of its actual card game. It's very hard for you to actually just stumble into the world of Magic. There was supposed to be a Netflix show, but to my knowledge, it's basically dead in the water. And that's where I think a lot of this Beyond Universe properties are being designed for. And they sell really well, partially because they are also really well designed. I do think the Warhammer decks, as well as the Doctor Who decks that they made, have a lot of extremely fun cards that don't feel are like breaking the game and sort of their unhinged junkie cards, but at the same time add some very interesting new ideas and styles when they had to try and fit whatever the property was asking for. So on a mechanical level, they are really fun cards. And I assume this is being shown in the fact that for Hasbro, which hasn't been doing that well recently, Magic the Gathering has actually increased by 20% in the last quarter. Now, there are many reasons why that may be happening with Hasbro, but the overall story is that Magic is its golden goose. And in order to get more people to play Magic and hopefully buy more Magic, you need to find a way to get people to naturally find their way in rather than it being more like a fraternity or secret club that you need someone in the know to bring you into the game. Now, there are plenty of other things we could talk about of what does this mean for the health of the game, of Commander taking over versus Standard and Limited, but none of those really matter if we don't keep replenishing the player base. And I think that will ultimately be one of the big things. I mean, that's why I think they finally got Marvel online. That's a big deal because with Marvel's popularity right now, obviously being able to play as some of your favorite heroes into that card game are going to get people to try Magic just because they want a Spider-Man card. And speaking of which, I'm now really curious because we talked about this before. I never thought Marvel would enter Disney's Lorcana. Same thing with Star Wars because the Star Wars card game and because there's already the Marvel Versus game. But if Marvel's willing to jump into Magic and Disney already owns Disney's Lorcana, maybe we actually could, in some future timeline, see Marvel make a small appearance in the Disney Lorcana card game. So that's the other thing I want to talk about. It seems that, I guess, Disney can do what they want with their copyright, but it might be more fluid than I originally thought. So overall, like I said, we're seeing a lot of properties coming to Magic the Gathering, whether it's going to be short term in terms of getting a boost, but turns out to hurt the game overall, or whether long-term, this will actually be a great way for you to add new blood to the table for Magic the Gathering. And of course, maybe it's in the cards. I mean, probably still unlikely, but this might be a sign that Marvel could show up in Disney's Lorcana as well. Our next story is about a new organization to help game designers get off the ground easier, as well as make better deals with larger board game publishers. This new organization, founded by Elizabeth Hargrave, Jeff Engelstein, as well as Sen Lim, is titled Tabletop Game Designers Association. The idea behind this group is that they're going to work with designers as well as more smaller independent board game publishing companies in order to try and help out with contracts, professional development, and advocacy in the tabletop industry. This is not actually new. Apparently, there are other organizations that do this, obviously one of the largest ones being located in Germany. However, they actually were thinking about trying to spread those out, and they were actually told it's probably best to make a North American centered one and then maybe make connections with each other, which is why they're making this new one. Now, they do have plans to go a bit more worldwide, but this will be more North American focused. It does make some sense, as I wouldn't be surprised, as it's just easier for the different organizations in different marketplaces and as well as, different regulations and rules to make sure that whatever contracts, a contract might work in one country and might not technically work in another one. So I understand where they're coming from here. Now, this already has 3 large names when it comes to board game designing already attached to it as founders, but there are plenty more constantly being added. So I'm not surprised that this is going to grow very big, very fast. Now, they do plan to officially launch. I don't know what the right word would be, starting next year. And their first focus is really going to be on contracts, basically the deals that you make with publishers when it comes to bringing your game and game design, which obviously, that should be one of the top priorities, as that's the first way that game designers can make money and stay afloat. But they hope to increase this and as well as work with advocacy, representation, discounts with manufacturers or with conventions. So they have a lot planned in mind to try and help out game designers, partially just because some of them mentioned how there's just things that they just learned about. And if they're only learning about it and they're already big game designers, what about people who are new? So if you are planning to do any form of game design or you already design games, I highly recommend you keep an eye on this. This seems perfect for anyone who wants to learn the tips and tricks of the trade without having to spend a large amount of time and a large amount of mistakes before learning them. And of course, being able to have better deals with companies earlier on means that you're going to have a much better safety net and usually make some better games as well. So definitely something to worth check out and sounds very positive when it comes to the health of the board game industry. This final story is a little bit old, but still interesting. Oftentimes we talk about, especially older games, if they're solved or not, some of them being pretty easy to solve, tic-tac-toe, while others may be a bit more difficult as there are tons of permutations. Othello being one of the more harder ones. However, recently an article was published that stated that Othello had been solved. Even with its many, many permutations, it turns out that if both sides play a perfect game, which is possible, then it will always end in a draw. So this is another game now that AIs can perfectly match you against, and you still have a chance to not lose if you can perfectly play against them. But of course, it does end up in a draw, which is both good and bad. So AI programmers, I guess, try to program the Super Othello AI, and now we'll see what is the next game that can be solved. Maybe Magic the Gathering? Well, probably not. And now on to game announcements first. Marvel Champions has another big box campaign, this one titled Age of Apocalypse, and if you can't guess from that name, is all about the villain, Apocalypse. It will include 2 new heroes, Magic and Bishop, both of them famous X-Men characters, finishing off a trilogy of campaign stories with an X-Men focus. Arcane Wonders has announced Foundations of Metropolis, which is a smaller version of Foundations of Rome that will be set to release next year, and beloved game Colosseum is getting a new edition. This was last seen with Tasty Menstrual Games, which went out of business a little while back. So now you can return to the Colosseum with a whole new edition of the game, which does seem to take, once again, a bit more of a more serious tone with the artwork based on the last one that had a bit more of a cartoony artwork style. For those who are fans of the Diablo franchise but haven't been too happy with the recent video game entries, can look forward to a new Diablo RPG book series as well as a board game. Now, we don't know much else beyond this, but I can almost say for certain both of them will do a good job in trying to be dungeon crawlers. That is pretty core to the concept of Diablo as a series. And then finally, as a more quick note, I used to have a Kickstarter segment as part of the news, but I took it out to try and just cut down on some time. Now I'm going to bring them back. I'm actually going to have a separate video, just a quick short video, because that will just quickly go over some of the interesting Kickstarters and what's ending. And I'm going to bring back that final page of Kickstarters that are ending in the next few days to this news video, as it's something that is very timely and maybe something you care a bit more about, rather than what's the newest Kickstarter that you usually have at least 30 days or so to back. So one of them shouldn't be that big of a surprise if you know my favorite games, and that's the new edition of Secrets of the Lost Tomb. This is their 10th year anniversary, so this is a new updated version. I love this game, and if you love the idea of exploring a temple, finding new rooms, if you like something like Betrayal and just want to try to keep it a bit more, or usually a bit more cooperative, then this is definitely a game you want to check out. Now, for the card game lovers out there, Soulforge Fusion has a new digital version up on Kickstarter you can back, as well as, of course, get some of the physical copy goodness. I got to play this a little while back last year, and it's a lot of fun. It's really clever, really cute. And for the physical tournaments, they actually have special cards made and then destroy depending on which faction actually wins the tournament. And now for a board game that won't hurt you as much in the wallet, we've got Critter Kitchen. This is actually from the same people who did Flamecraft, which was another game I really enjoyed, so this is one I'm looking forward to. And finally, this is not a game per se, but it's definitely designed with board gamers in mind, and that's Wall Zap. I can't remember which set I used to have it on, but I used to have the game's canvas hanging on my wall. These were games that were designed actually to hang on a wall with either a thumbtack or however you'd hang a portrait. The idea behind Wall Zap is to basically make it so any game can do that. It uses magnets to not only hold it up against the wall, but keep the box lid closed. So you're not just hanging the box, you are hanging the whole game, so you can take it down and play the game, then put it back up if you think it has a really nice cover. Or you can use it to hang your current campaign game as a reminder that you still need to finish it, so it's always there for everyone to see. But that is all we have for this week. I apologize if you really look forward to these and I just haven't been putting them out. I'll try to collect some more stories and make it more consistent. Because like I said, I don't just want to talk about announcements for games because that's just whatever you're interested in. I'd rather just wait until I can either review or preview whatever the game is. I'm also going to try to get back into doing the separate things shorts every Tuesday for more of your crowdfunding, Kickstarter stuff. But I'll say whatever is ending back in the news because, like I said, I usually try to pick things that are ending within 48 hours or so, the usual 2-day alert. So in case you missed out about that, you still have that short period of time to back them. But let me know about any of these stories, what you think about the Beyond Universe and Magic the Gathering. Are you excited to take part in the new association for game designers? And what do you expect to see from the future of both of those? I'd love to hear all your thoughts in the comments down below, as well as maybe how you think the Exploding Kittens TV show is going to be. But for now, I'm Will, and this has been the News Roundup.